everyone. Hello. Thank you for inviting me to the Techno Day. It's my first time at this conference, and thank you. I would like to thank the organizing team for inviting me. And the topic of today's talk is can we predict the optimal career path in a data-driven way? And I'm a PhD, and I recently finished my PhD, but it was not a part of my PhD. This project, it's actually a project I do in my own company. And I would like to first start from telling you a little bit about who I am and where I came from and why this project actually happened. So first of all, what I was doing in my life up to this point, well, I'm Polish. I was studying in my undergrad studies. I was studying in Poland, in Warsaw, and I did 3 masters in physics, mathematics, and psychology. At the Warsaw University, and I combined those because I already knew I had some thoughts about investigating human brain as a way of living. I wanted to do it professionally and pursue towards a PhD. So I combined the knowledge from a few different disciplines to achieve that. And then before going to grad school, I also did a program in MBA. It was actually a small, reduced version of MBA. It was a young MBA. It was a intensive course that I finished with a certificate, and it was fun. But at that point, I thought it was easy, and it was not really as noble as doing science. And I thought, this is too easy for me. I don't think business development is really challenging. And now I'm thinking maybe this is what I should have been doing. But back then I thought, well, this was just a vacation time for me, and I'm going back on the track and starting a PhD. And then I started a PhD in computational neuroscience in Nijmegen in the Netherlands, where I am now. And then after my contract expired, I didn't really know what to do next at first, and I wanted to take a rest. So I took a gap year. And in the end of 2017, I started working. It was actually a charity work. I started getting engaged into career development activities around the Organization for Human Brain Mapping, and I became a career development and mentoring manager. And I enjoyed it a lot. That's why I decided to do more in that direction. And then in 2018, I started a little foundation that runs here in the Netherlands. And it's oriented at helping researchers in developing their careers, but also there are some data science, like the open science activities around it as well. So it has multiple different, it entails multiple different activities in one. And then I thought, okay, I have to still do more about this topic because I want to make it my way of living. So I started a company in 2019, and I wrote a book about the topic. The book is entitled "What is out there for me: The landscape of post-PhD career tracks." So if you are a PhD looking for options in the job market and thinking about what to do next, I can recommend this book. And the project I'm going to talk about today closely relates to this part of my life. So the company and what I'm doing at the moment, and I started some research projects that will hopefully lead to some really interesting developments. So that's what I would like to tell you about today. And so at the moment, I'm still a director of Stictin Solaris, and I'm owner of my own company. And I write books. And my second book is in the pipeline, and it's going to be more in general about career development in 21st century and in times of the pandemic. And I think it's going to be a very interesting one. And I blog in free time, and I started a YouTube channel some time ago. So if you guys would like to hear career stories from PhDs who transferred to industry, then I can recommend that channel. So you're welcome to take a look. And okay, so to the point. Today's job market is very complicated. So we have different options of how to develop our careers. And even if you have a very specific skill set, like let's say data analysis or programming skills or technical writing skills, something that is very specific, or certain like you mastered all the web lab skills during your PhD, And then it's still, you have a lot of different options because your life will very much depend on which tribe you choose in the job market. So you might go to a corporation, and you might go to a startup, you might run your own company. It really, and even with the same set of skills and the same kind of deliverables, your life will very much differ depending on where you go. And in fact, it's a choice between choosing for stability at work and working benefits, and choosing for personal freedom, because the more stability you have, the less personal freedom you have, and sometimes you have to make a choice, and you can't have both of them at the time, at least not in the beginning. So briefly, I don't want to get too much into detail here, but briefly, this is the roughly the landscape. So you, on the one hand, you have jobs in public sector that are relatively stable and safe, but at the cost of personal freedom. You don't have as much movement and as much freedom to choose your own topics when you work there. We have also jobs in private companies, in large companies, in small companies, and in startups that are like a bit different. Like there's a difference between a small company that is not a startup and a small company that is a startup, because that company is built to grow. So it's the dynamics is very different. And in principle, in those type of environments, you start from nothing. You have to build your name. So you're not you're not very like safe in the beginnings. You often start with internship, so you have to prove yourself first. But then your amount of freedom at work will slowly grow in time, and the same with the stability and working benefits. And eventually, you can achieve a really good lifestyle. And in like as a rule of thumb, in corporations, you usually have more stability and less freedom than in startup jobs. And on the other hand, we also have academia. Academic jobs are a little bit different. So somewhere midway your career, in the times of postdoc contracts, your freedom is really limited, and stability at work as well. You have a lot of projects, a lot of people to satisfy at the same time. But if you survive through that period, then you land in a happy corner and become a professor who has all the benefits of working as an academic. And and lastly, we have entrepreneurs and freelancers who have, in principle, more personal freedom to launch their own projects than anybody else, but they have a rough start. And you like, if you choose this type of career, you have to really make compromises, this in the beginnings, in terms of your safety and the sense of comfort. You will really have to go out of your comfort zone for the first few years, often, to get there. So this is roughly the picture. And the question is, okay, so where do I go? So like most people today, and it's not even only true about the PhD graduates, but also people who never went for a PhD. My impression is that most of white collar employees today, even if they successfully developed careers, they have that dilemma, and they wonder, well, am I in the right place? Am I in the optimal place? Maybe I should do something else. Maybe this is not my true calling. Maybe I should just think of changing and just challenge myself. And I also know people who change jobs even after 30 years. After 30 years spent in a corporation, they quit and start their own business, and they have all the freedom to do so. And because they got to a certain status, and now they can actually choose what they do next, and they actually find happiness doing business. That's just an example. But in general, I feel that for most professionals, uh, if they had a good opportunity, they might actually try something new in their life. So and the job market is very complicated, not only in the times of Corona, but even before. Like it's always changing faster than we can adapt in terms of our skills. So the skills that are in demand now are different from skills that were demanding 5 years before. But we don't study fast enough, and we can't really adapt fast enough to track this trend. So that creates a lot of confusion and instability. Um, So like one thing I would like to pay attention in this talk too is that skills and resume are not all that matters when you choose a career path. So what we often focus on when we choose our next career track or next job is our skills and interest and our background, and we try to fit the job description to what we have in our CV or our resume. And this is not the optimal approach, because there is also the second dimension, which is our personality or mentality, and this also matters for like this influences our choices, and this is the often the most important factor that decides whether we are happy at work or not. So it's very important to pay attention to this aspect while choosing the next job. And so the research question in the study was how to predict the optimal career path based on the working style, personality, and values. Is it possible to figure out what is your optimal role and in which tribe should you actually work? And so where are your soulmates? Where are your where can you feel understood best when you go out to the job market, and then you start interacting? Where will be the group of people that understand you best and that can let you develop to the best of your abilities? And so I would like to mention here about what aptitude tests are, because the whole study is the purpose of the whole study I'm going to talk about is creating an aptitude test that might help professionals, white-collar professionals especially, to reach that goal. So to figure out where they fit best and choose the right career track. So first of all, what are aptitude tests? So according to Wikipedia, an aptitude is a component of a competence to do a certain kind of work at a certain level. An outstanding aptitude can be considered talent, and those aptitudes can be either physical or mental. And well, according to Wikipedia, aptitude is inborn potential, although I would actually argue with this one. I think many aptitudes, like aptitude is something you can shape throughout lifetime. I don't think this is something you cannot influence. So I would actually argue with this part. But in general, this is aptitude is an ability to do something in a certain way. And just to give you examples of a few famous aptitude tests that you might have heard of, because they are quite well known. A very well known aptitude test is Raven's progressive matrices test. It's known as IQ measurement, so a measure of so-called fluid intelligence, and it was meant to be language free, in a sense that in this test you don't get any verbal tasks to solve. It's just you only get visual tasks, and your role is so the task is to choose the missing piece in the in a picture, and you always have a range of possibilities to choose from. So well, on one hand, this is actually a good idea, because that doesn't that reduces the problem of measuring intelligence to really like logical thinking, and it just takes apart this distracting factor, this language abilities. On the other hand, this is like just one isolated task, so measuring like intelligence as a whole, as a ability to think logically by just one task might be also biased. But like but in general, this is the most popular test to measure intelligence. It's used by Mensa Association. It's also used by many recruiters, and even like big names, big brands can use this test, or like tests alike on the in the recruitment process. Actually, many companies these days just try to replace this test with something else. So they order custom-made tests because this test is so well known that you can usually you can find it online easily, and you can actually prepare. So if you train yourself for a few hours doing this type of tasks, then you will become much better. So many people actually are prepared for this sort of task at the job interview. That's why employers also try to just get around the problem by ordering custom-made tests. But in general, the rule is very similar. Then you have to choose some missing element from a set of elements. And second test I'd like to mention is Galup Strength Finder. It's It's a test which basically shows you which 5 talents out of 34 possibilities are your top talents in a working place. And these are talents that are only relevant to professional development, such as an ability to listen, an ability to solve complex problems, an ability to, develop a vision and motivate people or inspire people. Like those crucial talents that can bring your career to the next level if you know how to develop them better. And in this test, we have 177 questions on a Likert scale. So it's a scale between I disagree completely and I completely agree. So it's you have to assess yourself on a scale from 1 to 7, and you will get the ranking of your top talents. And it's a very popular test, both among students and professionals. And I think it helped a lot of people also to believe in themselves better. And the third one is the 16 personalities test. It's actually based on Myers-Briggs model of personality that is 4-dimensional. So you have 4 different factors that, all together your personality is combined of, and on the basis of that, it's easy to calculate. You have 16 different possibilities for personalities, so 16 different personality types. And the basic version of this test contains 60 Likert scale questions. And I don't mention this test by accident, because this test is based on Carl Gustav Jung's theory of personality, which also, so he tapped onto multiple topics in his work, and one of the topics was the basics of human motivation and the roots of human motivation. And according to Jung, humans are focused on finding the right balance between the world outside their head and the world inside their head, and that desire to be well balanced is actually one of the driving factors for everything that we do. And actually, I myself, I was studying psychology, and I always found that theory of yet another accomplished psychologist actually more appealing to me, and that person was Alfred Adler, who actually also lived and worked in times of Freud, and where all these schools of modern psychology were created. He was also one of the thought leaders of those times. And according to Alfred Adler, at the roots of human motivation is the desire for self-improvement and upward drive for perfection, and that we all aim to contribute and to prove our value in some way. It's just different for different people. So some people actually, for some people, they have to earn a certain amount of money per year to feel that they prove themselves. For some people, they express themselves differently. For instance, it makes them happy to know that they have the most beautiful garden in the quarter, and some other person might be actually, they have a desire to be the best gamer, and somebody else might have a desire to get a Nobel Prize. It's really different, but we all want to be good at something, and we want to be an important contributor in some community. That's according to Alfred Adler at the roots of the human motivation, and I would agree with that. I think that this is a very important part of it, and based on this theory, loosely, of course, it was actually I got some inspiration from it. I started working on the test that might help professionals to choose the right career paths. So my thought was, well, in how many different ways can you possibly make a contribution? And I came up with a model. So we came up with a model that roughly lists 8 different types of contribution. And first 3 of them are like independent professionals who don't formally have a boss, and the other 5 are related to professionals who do have a boss in some way, shape or form. So first one is the academic, a person who wants to increase the human understanding of some problem, and doesn't necessarily have any commercial part to it. It's just to increase the knowledge of on certain topic. And second one is a freelancer, as a person who likes to collaborating with others, but always on the equal level. So not being employed and also not employing others, but the person who wants to develop projects as partnership and work one-on-one as well with on equal terms. An entrepreneur is a person who finds joy in building projects. So they have to actually start projects that are meant to grow, and that's a bit different mentality and different types of and different needs than freelancers. And there are also 5, as mentioned before, 5 roles that are more characteristic to employees. One of them is a manager, a person who manages teams. The other one is a specialist, a person who likes to become good at very specific, solving very specific class of problems and become good at it and known for it. And a missionary, someone who represents an institution or a company, but goes outside, like for instance, a teacher. A teacher is someone who represents the public system, but in fact works on a daily basis with students and with kids, and they have very strong drive, usually very strong internal motivation to help people. That's the first, this is the characteristic of a missionary. Then we have contributor, a person who is always at the behind the scenes, helping others to build an infrastructure for others to stand on the scene, and functions such as human resources or administration. Those people who they are always somewhere in the shadow, but they're actually very important for the the people who actually create intellectual property to be able to work. And communicator is a type of person who finds special satisfaction from developing projects by means of communication. So representing projects, selling, communicating, developing communities, and is very very active in that space. And depending on what is your preferred type of contribution, you might develop your career in different ways. For instance, as an academic, you could become a craftsman, someone who is very good with solving specific types of problems in academic problems, or you might, and it's basically very structured in terms of how they build their career around it. Someone who is more like an artist, who experiments a lot and who is a bit more chaotic, but also charismatic and just inspires people a lot. Or you might become a politician. You might become, in parentheses, so someone who builds collaborations and builds science by building teams mostly, and the right teams, and bringing the right people together. And as a freelancer, you can also develop in multiple ways. You can become a star, someone who has a vision and stands on the scene, like an artist. Artists are, often well known, but in fact, when you think about it, they are freelancers. This is the model they chose. You can become a bee, like meaning someone who just likes to help people one-on-one and is not seeking attention. It just likes to do for a living what they enjoy, and this is their main priority. For instance, a gardener, someone who comes to your house and makes beautiful, does beautiful job around your garden. This is a type of freelancer that I'm talking about. And rentier is someone who would spend a few years just developing some business model that gives them passive income, because what they really want in life is to have passive income and often travel, but even if not, then just be safe financially. And this is how they feel accomplished the most. And if you're a type of entrepreneur, then this is a classic one. There are hipsters, hackers, and hustlers, and I think this is quite a intuitive division. And if you type of contributor that is on the right side of this picture, then there are multiple different ways of developing your career, and there are different types of companies that are associated with different types of working environments and different customs and different tribal habits, tribal customs that you should be familiar with. And depending on your personality, you might actually find yourself more valuable and more accomplished in a corporation or a startup or maybe in public institutions. So that really depends on who you are and how well you fit with the expectations in that environment. So that's exactly the point of the test, to help people choose the right role and choose the right way of developing their career. And I took into account 4 main types of variables. First of all is working style, but the natural one, so not the working style that was imposed on you in your last contract, but your natural working style. So natural way of natural circadian rhythm, natural ways of like structuring your day, and these little things during the day that motivate you, give you energy, and take your energy, and how you organize your life at work in general. And the second type is your type of mind. So whether or not you're a generalist or maybe you're a specialist. So what types of problems you prefer to solve, and also susceptibility to stress. So under what circumstances you are motivated, and under what circumstances you are stressed and demotivated. And that's very important, because this is something you cannot easily change. And third one is relations with other people. So what is the type of relations that you usually choose, and how do you motivate yourself? And also, like, what type of roles do you typically choose in teams, like naturally, when you don't have any constraints? And the last one is your values and beliefs. So what is like your model of the world? Like, what do you believe? Like, what is money to you? What is, do you believe in luck? This type of beliefs are also strongly influence your opportunities in the job market, because to find a group of people who think like you really have to find a good fit there, and find people who have the same outlook at life as well. So this is also important part, yet often overlooked in aptitude tests on the job market. So when I was thinking how to best compose the questions for this test, basically I decided not to go for Likert scale. So as mentioned before, Galup Strength Finder, it's composed in a way that you have Likert scale. So you have to evaluate yourself on a scale from 1 to 7, between I fully agree and I fully disagree. But this is a bit problematic, because then, after a period of time, when you have like question number 50, question number 100, question number 150, like you get fatigues, and this fatigue like makes people be less cautious about what they answer. And you can, if you're tired, if you don't like the question, you can also give a lazy answer, just choose the middle option. And this is what many people do at the end of long tests. So the results might be not reliable. And this is a big problem in psychometrics, that if a test is structured this way, then it doesn't really guarantee reliable results. So as a alternative, I chose a different structure. So I chose a structure in which you have 4 options and you can only choose one. And this is much harder to build. Like the test built this way is much harder, because you have to, for each question, you have to choose a scope of options that kind of cover the possibilities fully, yet are distinct from each other, so that every person can kind of classify themselves in one of these 4 groups. And this is just, funny, this example is just for fun. It's not from the test, but this is just to give you an example of like how the questions are structured and why. So, and in this way, if you give 4 options and you only have one to choose, then you have to analyze the question. You can't give a lazy answer, because in every single question you have to think, and you have to compare the answers, and you can't really lose your concentration. And that was my priority, to make sure that every participant is actually focused on the task until the very last second. And also what I wanted to achieve is the experience. So not only the fact that you answer to a number of questions, but also make them interesting enough so that the time spent on solving this test is also an experience in itself. It's just that it's a quality time that you spend with yourself, thinking about yourself, and that's already a pleasant experience. That was also the purpose. So because aptitude tests, many people think, I don't like tests. They are, always these boring lists of hundreds of questions. And indeed, like to be reliable, a test has to be long, but I think that it doesn't have to be boring. So I actually really aimed at creating something that is interesting for participants to solve. And this is just an example. Just to give you an example, the test contains only original questions, not copied from other tests. So we were working on it so that it's actually, and some of them are really unexpected, and this is not what you typically see in questions about the job market and these career builders and strength finders. That the questions in this test are very different. So this is just an example, and the questions like this, they push you to think about yourself very intensively, and that was exactly the point. And the pipeline is so now we finally come to some tech eventually. So the pipeline to how to build this test is that we started with 140 different questions, and this is what you always do. So you always start with longer list because after you collect the data, you will have to clean it. And so, for instance, questions that correlate with each other, where the responses correlate too high, they have to be eliminated. The questions where one of the answers is not chosen by anyone or chosen by a very small percentage of participants, they don't have really good discrimination between groups, so they have to be eliminated. And before you even get down the line and start building the classifier, you have to really eliminate the set from all these unnecessary questions. And also in this first batch, we had a lot of comments. So I opened. So when I was collecting the data, I opened the pipeline. So I opened the forms so that any participant could comment on any question. So we also got a lot of comments, and we had to also edit the questions to, many of these comments were actually, they were all valid. So we had to actually work a lot on the structure and content of the test to make to conform to these comments. And in the end, we created the two sets of questions. One of them called professional, for full-fledged professionals who already spend a few years in the job market and they know themselves enough to answer all the questions that are in the form, and that contains 128 questions, so 4 times 32. And the student version for those who are still undergrads and they don't have enough information about themselves yet. For instance, they never had a boss, so they cannot really answer the question about what is your relation with your boss. So there's a smaller version of the test. It has 96 questions. And based on that data, we did a prediction study to build a classifier, and we used linear discriminant analysis. It's quite a standard method in data science to find a linear combination of features that best predict certain categories. So in our case, our features are actually separate questions. So of course the responses to various questions correlate with each other, but the highly correlated ones we already eliminated before. So we basically treated, in this part of the study, we treated features as independently. And we built a classifier, and then in the second part, we had to validate it on a representative population of white-collar professionals to be able to derive confidence intervals. So to tell, for instance, to be able to tell the participant, well, you are more corporate than 60% of the participants, or of the general population, or you have more potential to become a freelancer than 82% of the population. So it's really important for me also to make sure that the test gives some quantitative results, not only qualitative, because I also see that done often, that aptitude tests, they basically give the participants only qualitative results. So they tell you, well, this is your ranking of skills, or this is your ranking of potential professions, and you don't really see any numbers behind it. So you can think to yourself, but where do I score in a population? And so if the test tells me that I would do well in a corporation, does it tell me so because this is my highest score, which is not high in general terms, or is it really high? So I think really looking at how you compare to the general population is always the key, because that's eventually what decides about if you will do well in this environment. So So this is the pipeline, and I wish I could show you results, but at this stage. But actually, the data analysis is still running, and I think that it would be a little bit too early to show you the results. And also, I have to make sure that the back end of this test, since I do it for my own company, the back end of this test will be actually not available to public, so I can only speak about it in private. But this is the pipeline, and I wanted to give you this presentation today because I think the aptitude tests, I think they have bad press for many reasons, some of them valid, because it's often the case that there is no proper analysis and there is no proper methodology behind them. So that's also something that I am trying to change and just be very transparent about how it's done. So far, so good. The preliminary results are quite promising. So I have a belief that you indeed can predict the optimal career path on the basis of your personality and values. But I will have to wait a little bit longer for the final set of results. And thank you for your attention. I would encourage you to read and figure out more information about aptitude tests and what's been done so far. And perhaps you also will like some of them, some of the tests that are already available. I think many of them are very useful. So I would like to encourage you to explore more on this topic. And I would like to thank you for your attention. And if you'd like to reach out to me, then there is a whole bunch of ways how you can do it. You can find me on LinkedIn. Also, you can find me on Twitter. And I can also encourage you to subscribe to our company newsletter if you'd like to get the updates on what's being done regarding the test. And the test's supposed to come out in May or June this year, so relatively soon. So if you would like to get the updates and find out when it's out, then please subscribe. And thank you so much for your attention.